Hey, this is Russ. You know, a lot of good things to talk about today. Let me start out with the first one. Recently, my daughter sent me a text, and she said that a friend of hers, and I believe she said she was out in California, her father wrote a song about e-bikes. Yeah, I'm going to put a link of his video in the description of my video, okay? So I want you to go out and check it out. Yeah, give him a little bit of love. Now, whether you like his video or you don't, or whether you like his music or you don't, check it out anyway, all right? Be kind. Russ is right, sending you guys there. So, yeah, you're representing me if you're going to make a comment in that video. So be kind, all right? But the fact is that he made a video and a music composition about his enjoyment of riding e-bikes. So I wanted to share it with you, okay? Man's name is Dan Calhalan. Calhaland? Did I pronounce that properly? I'm sorry if I did it wrong, okay? But yeah, go ahead and check out that video. All right. Next thing I want to talk about. Himiway. Himiway did a launch of 3 new e-bikes yesterday, and they talked about their new models. Now, some of these models are a little bit different. Yeah. So I was online with John, who's one of our subscribers, and we were kind of typing back and forth as we were watching the launch of the new Himiway bikes and kind of discussing it. And at the end of the day, when we were all done with the whole video, he said, "Have you made your video for Saturday yet?" And I said, "No, not yet." He goes, "Yeah, I'm interested to see what the topic will be on Saturday." So yeah, here it is. All right, here you go, John. Let's talk about it. Now, Himiway has introduced 3 new models. The first model they introduced, I'm not even going to talk about the names of the models yet because I don't know if they're officially launched yet. I took a look at their website just before I made this video, and they're not actually shown or featured in the website yet. They do show pictures of the 3 new models up there, but they don't really talk too much about it. So I don't want to say the actual names of these things yet. Okay. So anyway, you can watch the Himiway product launch. I'll put a link in the description for that too. All right, just go to the description and you'll see the links for it. Then you can watch it. And you can decide for yourself. Okay. So the first model that they launched was a very small e-bike. Yeah, I'm not kidding. This is physically very small and lightweight. I think it's mid 30s in the weight, something like that, in pounds. And so, but what the difference was is they said that this is made for the young adults, and for somebody who has to maybe bring it to the office, and there's not a lot of space to put an e-bike. You know, we all know there's folding e-bikes and the like, but I'm not kidding. This bike is really small, right? So you could really save space in the fact that it's light in weight. It's a lot easier to transport. Yeah, so that's good, right? But here's the thing that got to me. It doesn't have pedals. It's a throttle-only bike. So the pedals that they have are not really pedals. They're just kind of like pegs where you can rest your feet, but there's no actual pedaling that happens on this bike. So the first thing in my mind was, is this legal for them to sell as an e-bike? I mean, really, by the definition of an e-bike, it's a bike that you pedal, and there's a motor that helps you along. And of course, you can throttle it as well. I talked on the last video about Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 e-bikes. I don't know how you would classify this if you can't pedal it. So John and I were kind of like, what's up with this bike? All right, that's the first one I want to say. Now, the second bike that they introduced, all right, it's kind of interesting bike. It's got, it's a little bit lighter in weight, but the thing that really got me interested was the fact that it comes in 2 options. You can buy it with a hub motor or buy it with a mid-drive. That's interesting, right? So that's the second bike. The third bike they introduced, it's kind of similar. You can buy it with a hub motor or buy it with a mid-drive motor. And this bike has no full suspension. It's just a front suspension on it, but it's got double batteries. Yeah, it's got 2 actual integrated batteries, one at the top of the top tube and one below. So that's kind of unique. So then I was asking myself, that is, would I buy this bike over their current top of the line, which was called the Cobra Pro, because it's roughly around the same price. The new bike does not have full suspension, but it has 2 batteries. Or would I buy the Cobra Pro, which has a full suspension, okay, and has a mid-drive motor on it. So in other words, the difference between the 2 models and price-wise, roughly in the same ranges, full suspension or double batteries. What do you think I would go for? Think about it. Put a comment below. Yeah, I'm going to tell you what I would go for. If it was me, I'd take the double batteries. You already know that. I mean, I like the feel of the full suspension. I mean, I do have the Magicycle Deer. It has full suspension. I don't go a lot of places that require a full suspension. But even on the streets, if I hit a pothole or I hit something that's not even on the road, that extra suspension in the back, I can feel that. So it's a smoother ride, right? Now, whether you feel it's worth the money to spend for just that smoother ride, that is your own personal decision, right? But personally, for me, I like it. So I would pay the extra money to get it. But some people wouldn't. Some people would say, I'd save the money, I'd buy the Cruiser, the Magicycle Cruiser or something like that, because it's kind of similar in terms of performance, but it doesn't have the suspension, and it saves you a lot more money. So it's personal preferences, right? So let's talk about this third e-bike offering from Himiway, all right? And here's the issue I had with this bike, okay? Now, first off, you might be asking, hey, Russ, are you getting any of these Himiway bikes for review? I might. We don't know. It all depends on whether Himiway decides to send me one or they don't, all right? So, but I would gladly take these bikes and review them because they all have very good, interesting features on them, all right? But here's the thing I have with the third bike. It's got a very powerful motor on it. Now, normally I would say that's great. Give me the power, right? Because I like to go fast. I like the power. But this is a 1,000-watt motor. Now, if you go by the letter of the law, bikes here in the United States are supposed to be 750 watts. This is 1,000. So now the question is, can they legally sell it here in the United States? You see what I'm saying? And if they are legally able to sell it here in the United States, where can you ride this bike? Now, certain type of places prohibit certain types of bikes, right? And we talked about this at the last video that I did about Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 e-bikes. And certain paths specifically tell you only Class 1, Class 2 e-bikes can be on my path, right? So now you have something that's actually past the Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 qualifications because they're giving you a 1,000-watt motor on it. Where can you ride this bike legally? Now, it doesn't mean that people who buy these bikes won't go on certain paths because we know people do. Like, for instance, for myself, let's use me as an example, okay? And I'll probably hear it in the comments. But yeah, be nice. We're discussing this. Don't go and blast me for it, okay? Now, you know that many of my bikes come shipped to me as a Class 2 e-bike, but I have modified those classifications to turn it into Class 3 e-bikes. Because many of the bikes, you can go into the menu of your display screen and tell it, yeah, I don't want to max out at 20 miles per hour. Give me the 28 miles per hour option. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So now, if you take that bike that was legally sold to you as a Class 2 e-bike when they shipped it to you, and you consciously said, I'm turning it into a Class 3, can you ride that bike on those paths? And the answer technically would be no, you can't. Do I do it? Yes, I do. Now, the way I do it, by the letter of the law, it's probably not right to be on that path, but I'm not riding 28 miles an hour on that path, right? Many of those paths have a 15-mile limit. I try to stay within the 15-mile-per-hour limit, but I know oftentimes I'm at about 18, okay? So even with a Class 2 e-bike, they tell you to be at 15, you're probably still at 18 sometimes, right? You go up and down. You're riding, it goes up and down. So sometimes you peak a little bit, sometimes you back off a little bit. So, but I try my best to stay within the 15. I'm definitely not doing 20 miles an hour down those paths, right? Because I know there's walkers, I know there's other bike riders. I try not to. So I'm usually between 15 and 18 on those paths. But again, If you want to go based on the law, you're supposed to be no faster than 15. All right. So now you got this 1,000-watt motor on your bike. You don't fit on any of the classifications because by the letter of the law, it says 750. How do they get away with 1,000 watts to sell? Now, they're not the only ones that have high-power motors on their bikes. There's other companies that do it as well. But this is Himiway, all right? They've tried their best to stay. Like, for instance, my Himiway Zebra does 25 miles per hour. It's not technically a Class 2 e-bike when you say that. And it's not even a Class 3 because it can't hit the 28 miles per hour. I think I've only really gotten it to 24 miles per hour. It doesn't go faster than that. I think for me, as a rider of the Zebra, my big disappointment of that bike is that it doesn't do the 28 miles per hour. I want 28 miles per hour, yeah. So, but I can't. And I'm definitely over the legal limit of 20 if I wanted to call it a Class 2. So this is the dilemma we have with bikes today. Sometimes they skirt the law a little bit. Yeah, but how do you skirt it when you're actually advertising this is a 1,000-watt motor? Now, I'm not saying that that's bad. Quite frankly, if they gave me that bike to review, I would gladly accept it. Yeah, I want my power. Yeah, and they know we want our power. But I'm talking the law now. How do they get around that, okay? So anyway, in the future, we might see one of these bikes come my way. We might not. I mean, after this video, Himiway sees this, they'll probably say, forget it. We're not sending it to Russ is Right. I hope they don't think that because I do actually appreciate the bikes that are coming out, but I'm just talking about the legalities of it. Okay. So yeah, John was interested to find out what the topic of the video would be for Saturday because he knew I wouldn't be able to keep quiet about this because it's in my mind at this point. It would probably be Saturday's video, and then here we are, right? So yeah, now I could keep my mouth shut and said nothing, in the hopes that just Himiway will send me the bike and whatever. But that's not how we do things here at Russ is Right. We talk about the issues with e-bikes. And that is an issue I would have to resolve in my brain. How do I deal with this 1,000-watt issue? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to ride this bike in a way that requires always 1,000 watts to be used. I mean, if I don't ride hard, I might be at 400 watts, 500 watts of usage. So am I legally allowed to ride on the road? And the answer would be technically no, you're not, because the bike itself is stated as 1,000 watts. So even though you don't use the 1,000 watts because you're riding slower, you're riding less powerful, are you allowed to be there? So you see the problem? Well, same thing happens now too because many of my bikes, like I said, I modify them and I turn them into Class 3 e-bikes by telling the controller, don't limit me, it's 20, give me the 28. So when they sell me that bike, like for instance the Magicycles, okay, they sell it to me as a 20 miles per hour Class 2 e-bike, but I go in there and I tell it, give me 28 miles per hour because that's how I like it. So, can you ride that everywhere? And the answer technically would be no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't be on certain paths because it requires you to be Class 1 or Class 2. You see my problem here? So if they were to give me that 1,000-watt motor e-bike, where would I ride this thing and still stay legal? Okay. Now, do you have to stay legal? No, you could break the law. Many of us do. We don't follow 100% the legal description, right? Like for instance, okay, we want to talk about that too. Let's go back into the rolling stop issue. You know how we've been talking about this for the last 2 years. Yeah, I don't technically stop at stop signs fully. I mean, if you're gonna do a proper stop, you stop, you count off 3 seconds, and you go. Okay, I don't do that on a bike. I usually roll up to the stop sign. I'm usually still at about 4 or 5 miles an hour, something like that. And then I move forward. Sometimes I'm even still at like 8 miles an hour, and then I move forward. But you could definitely see I went from, say, 20 miles per hour, and I've dropped down to 8 miles per hour, and then I continued on. I looked around. There's no cars or no people. I move forward. And the reason we do this rolling stop is because fully stopping and counting 3 seconds means hopping off the bike, stopping, starting up again. You're eating battery power like crazy every single time you start up from a slow start. You see what I'm saying? On top of that, it's tiring to keep hopping off your bike. Now, if they say cars do it, you're sitting in a car, all right? You are sitting in a car. It's a lot easier to sit there for 3 seconds and move forward, and you've got a lot of power. That's not the same for a bike, okay? You have to hop off the bike and stop and stand up and then move forward. You see what I'm saying? Now, some of you will say if you lowered your seat, you wouldn't have to stand up, you just stay seated. That's not how I ride, all right? I ride technically the way bikes should be ridden, full extension, not full, slight bend in it, but a lot taller saddle height than many of us do, okay? And don't criticize me for that either, because that's how I've always ridden. I've always ridden with decent extension to get full pedal power going through. Plus, if you have a replaced knee like I do on my left knee, I'm rubbing my knee again, you want the extension. People have said to me, you have a bad knee, you should lower it so you don't have to hop off the bike. No. If the bike was lowered where I'm kind of bent up a little bit as I'm pushing down, that's harder on your knee, okay? So if you have a bad knee, you want the proper extension on your bike when you're pedaling. It's actually easier for your knee, all right? Believe me, I'm telling you the truth. This is truly what happens. So you want good extension, all right? Anyway, we digress. Think about this whole thing with the Himiway bikes coming out, the 1,000-watt motor issue, the no pedal on the first bike, all right? That's a smaller wattage bike too, by the way, okay? Smaller battery as well. So its range is very limited. The other bikes have a lot more range. In fact, the top of the line bike is kind of cool. Like I said, it has 2 batteries. Yeah, and you can choose either a hub motor or a mid-drive motor on it. It's kind of cool. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. I just want you to think a little about it. Put some comments below. Be nice, all right? And check out the music video. There'll be a link in the description. I'll talk to you guys next time.